Okay, well, hello everyone. Good evening. Nice to see you all. Um, this is a candidates meeting with Lindsay Duggan, who's running for councillor in Pittsburgh, and lovely to see you all here. You may know me. My name is Christine Sipnowicz, and I'm president of the Berryfield Village Association, which is relevant for this district, but I'm also chair of the Coalition of Kingston Communities, which is an umbrella organization of over 25 community groups who have different interests. Some of them are special advocacy groups for a particular issue like heritage or the waterfront. Others, though, are residents groups or groups that advocate for a particular neighborhood. Anyway, what they all have in common, despite differing views about policy and issues, is a concern for accountability and transparency at City Hall. And so we collect and engage and discuss procedural issues and do our best to take these issues up with the mayor, with council, and with staff. Anyway, in the interest of democracy and accountability, the coalition has taken it upon itself to organize all candidates meetings in districts that do not have a community organization organizing one already. So we did this back in the last municipal election, and we're doing again this time, although this time we decided that we would hold Zoom meetings for these districts that aren't otherwise holding an in-person meeting. So that's what we have tonight, and it's lovely to see people being able to engage and consider the issues before us in our district and the city more generally. Well, it's my great pleasure to introduce our moderator, who is going to keep order and introduce our candidate and lead the discussion, moderate the discussion. Her name is Jamie Mackenzie Naish. She's the managing director of the Kingston Area Association of Museums, Art Galleries, and Historic Sites. And she's a passionate community advocate for culture and heritage. With over 20 years experience in culture, heritage, and education, she's worked in a variety of learning environments with a variety of audiences and a variety of museum collections, both in Canada and the UK. Her family moved to Kingston in 1984 when her father was posted to RMC, and she grew up in Berryfield Village, where she continues to live with her own family. So thank you very much, Jamie, for taking charge. I'll just mention there's some more candidates meetings coming up later in the week, and I'll type some of that into the chat and also give you some other links that you might find useful. Thank you very much, Jamie. Really appreciate it. Honored to have you do this for us.
Thank you, Christine. I am delighted. Before we get too far ahead, full disclosure, I've received the dreaded, you have an internet connection. So once I'm done my intro here, I'm going to turn my screen off, but I am going to be here the whole thing, I promise. First of all, I'm looking at my list. So I'm just going to tell you how the evening is going to progress in the next hour. Managing the meeting and organizing questions. So first of essentially what's going to happen is our candidate who is here have an opportunity to introduce themselves to the group at a strict duration of 2 minutes. Then I will open up the question period with a set question. The candidate will have 3 minutes to respond. And then we're going to open up to everyone here on the call this evening. And then this is the tricky, our candidate will only have 90 seconds to respond to whatever questions you choose at them. And then as the evening rolls down, and our conversations, and then there'll be an opportunity for closing remarks for another 2 minutes. So even though we only have this evening, Lindsay Duggan, you can see her on the screen. Unfortunately, home declined the invitation for this evening. It makes my job easier as moderator. In the interest of fairness, we are sticking to our firm timelines. So no change in my job. I have my my watch. I'm going to be firm and strict. Let's get this evening going. I have the very great pleasure to introduce. So Lindsay, you had mentioned earlier that you wanted to start the evening with a land acknowledgement.
That's
I think
right.
we're going to take that outside of your 2 minutes. Okay,
Okay.
so we'll do that first and then we'll start with you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll start this evening off with a land acknowledgement. And so to begin, let us acknowledge that we are situated on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. We are grateful to be able to live, learn, and play on these lands. So thank you very much. First of all, thank you to the Coalition of Kingston Communities for hosting this, and for Jamie for agreeing to moderate. It is a wonderful opportunity for myself to be here and to really introduce myself to you and let you know a little bit more about myself. So I was originally born from Edmonton, Alberta, to a working class family. My father was a millwright up in Fort McMurray long before the oil sands were there. And my mom was a lab technologist working at the University of Alberta Hospital. Culturally, I'm very proud to be both Irish and Métis. My father was from a Cree community in northern Saskatchewan. I moved to Ottawa in 1997 to pursue post-secondary at Carleton University, where I graduated with a mass communications degree. After that, I worked for Canadian Blood Services for many years, and my most recent role, which was quite a long time ago, was the national manager for transfusion medicine. So I had the opportunity to work with people all across the country, which was incredible. We moved to Kingston in 2005, and I've lived in Pittsburgh district since 2006. I'm married to a very wonderful and patient man who supports me in every way, particularly when I tell him that I'm going to be running for city council. We have 3 teenagers, 16, 15, and 13, all very active students at 3 different schools, one at LaSalle, one at KSS, and one at Regi. So we've got all the schools covered in Kingston, I'm pretty sure. And they're also all competitive hockey players. So logistically, I'm a very good logistics manager. When we moved to Kingston, we both made the decision that because my job had been in Ottawa, that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. Quickly, though, I became immersed in all sorts of activities with the kids, anywhere from the libraries to the early Better Beginnings. And I became involved and learned a lot more about this community thanks to my kids.
All right, Lindsay, sorry, we've reached the 2-minute mark now.
Okay, wow.
I'm going to, but you got a lot in there. So that's brilliant. Thank you for that. All right, so let's get started. And I have the privilege of asking the very first question for the evening. Consider this a great warm-up question. So it is, what is the biggest issue that you are hearing from constituents in your district? And what steps will you take to address this concern if you are elected? And you have 3 minutes starting now.
Great. Well, as you, I'm sure, all aware, there are a lot of very important issues in the Pittsburgh district, but walking around to my constituents, the most pressing issue facing the residents of Pittsburgh are the lack of medical care. So there are currently 35,000 Kingston residents that do not have a family physician at this time. So that's over a quarter of our population. And as you know, if you don't have a family physician, they're really the gateway to our health and wellness. Oftentimes, people are now ending up in emergency rooms. They're going to walk-in clinics where care is often uncoordinated. So for instance, if you had a family doctor, you would have someone looking at your chart, looking after your care, coordinating with other healthcare professionals, and really looking after you as a individual or a family. And so we're currently not seeing that. What we're also seeing is longer wait times for emergencies, longer wait times for ambulatory services. And so that is really putting a strain on our healthcare system. Probably the most important issue is that people are not addressing their personal healthcare needs because of the lack of family physicians. And that is life-threatening. the delay in getting a family doctor is also adding to the current backlog of surgical cases in Kingston. Ontario has over 10,000 surgeries that need to be scheduled, and Kingston is no exception. Wait times are dangerously long and prevent much needed treatment and quality of life for our residents. So many people are concerned that they do not have a family physician, or in fact, their dedicated family physician right now is going to be retiring. And we're going to be seeing that in the next 2 to 5 years. So what we need to do is we need to come up with creative solutions that are outside the box, working with stakeholders in the medical community, such as the CMA, the provincial government, and really advocating for new ways of recruiting strategies that evolve from taking a look at, perhaps areas in northern New York State. Are there physicians available to work in our area? We're very lucky to be close to the border. Also looking at recruitment strategies for physicians that are foreign trained, and could we utilize their skills as they are now? In addition, working with the provincial government, the local chamber of commerce.
Sorry, Lindsay, that's
okay.
the 3-minute mark. I feel horrible. I was trained as a primary school teacher, and you're trained never to interrupt a child when they're speaking. Not that I'm saying, but to let them finish. I'm sorry, I'm feeling awfully mean, but don't.
I feel like those time frames are very quick.
I'm the coalition for setting the room. Anyway,
Well,
thank you.
We might let up a little bit if there's one candidate, maybe.
Oh, hey, I'm
just
in.
a thought. Just a
I'm
thought.
in.
I'll leave
I'm
it
just
to you,
following
Jamie.
my instructions.
No.
Shall we? Would you please finish your thought, Lindsay?
I only had about maybe 20 seconds more. In addition, I think what could also be done is we have a medical school in Kingston, and what would be incredible is to also work with them as a partner to perhaps, and of course with the funding for the medical school, to ensure that perhaps we could utilize not only more admissions into medical school, which would be wouldn't help us in the immediate future, but in fact help us in this longer term issue. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lindsay. All right. So we've come to the part where we're going to open the floor, and we're going to be a little more flexible in our guidelines. And we already have our first question, but I should have said earlier, and this is my fault, that if you do have a question, you're welcome to raise your hand like Joy has done. So Joy, I'm going to go to you first, or you can type it directly into the chat if you prefer. Officially, priority for questions will be given to people who are residents of the Pittsburgh district. So we are asking you to identify yourself as such. However, that being said, we have a nice small group, one candidate. We likely have time for the majority of questions. But I'm going to zip it, and I'm going to open the floor to Joy Hatley to ask her question of Lindsay.
Congrats, Jamie. You have pronounced my name correctly, which is unusual. So thank you very much. Lindsay, thank you for running. I love that you have supported the democratic process and that we have choice. And I also appreciate that you are highlighting something that is so dear to my heart, and that is the health of our community. And I love that you're thinking outside the box. You're thinking of what we do to address the problem. Terrific. I think that I can support your submission that we need to look outside our community for assistance. And that takes a lot of hands on decks, and it takes a lot of partnering. So my question to you would be, what will be your strategy for engaging other stakeholders in our community and working together with those stakeholders to achieve better health for Kingston citizens, particularly those in Pittsburgh?
Great, thanks, Joy. I know I kind of got cut off a little bit in my introduction, but in terms of my sort of life experience and what I do on a daily basis is I am a community builder, and I believe in relationship building. And I think that this issue that I am hearing from all over Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh, of course, is a very diverse group. We've got sort of subdivisions. We've got some farmers, we've got some people out on acreages, and we've got apartment buildings, condos. What I'd like to do is just ensure that we're open to the dialogue and offer, client engagement, so to speak, so that people can really contribute to what they think is important. And so, to get to your question in terms of strategy, is finding out how many people, let's say in Pittsburgh, don't have family physicians, how many are currently scared to go to the emergency room, and I think for me the most important thing is that people need to take care of their health. And so, when we talk a little bit about surgical backlog, how can we facilitate getting those surgeries through, because if people aren't healthy, as you know, we have a real loss of quality of life in the community. And so part of being a Kingstonian is also being able to take part in the things that we love to do. So I know that one of the things that's being tabled is a much needed independent surgical facility in Kingston, and that would be to capitalize on an out-of-hospital experience. And so having the minor surgeries that can then get them back to participating in society. So I think my strategy is to ensure that we're communicating with the right people, the people that can fund some of these facilities, the people that want to work and get the job done, and really make sure that the people that need these surgeries and that need the medical care have access to them.
Lindsay, I see we have another question from Elizabeth. Is it McDonald? Sorry, McDonald. There we go. Sorry, I was cut off my screen. So I'm going to open the floor to Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm glad, Lindsay, that you're here tonight and we have a chance to engage with you. Food insecurity is a growing issue, and it's often an invisible issue. And so I'd love to hear how you would address the food insecurity, both in terms of immediate need, but also do you have in mind some long-term strategies? And are there ways we can support local farmers as we address food insecurity? I think we're really blessed in the Kingston area to have some really exciting approaches to agriculture, some new farmers, some long established farmers that are growing food in some great sustainable, more increasingly sustainable ways. So what do you have to say about food insecurity in our part of the city and across Kingston generally? Thanks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That is an incredible question. So I'm actually on the board of St. Vincent de Paul here in Kingston, where we've seen almost 150% increase in clients using our services. So St. Vincent de Paul offers a lunch service, and since COVID, it's been a takeout lunch service. And so I have to say, I have to give a hats off to the staff that work there, because I know Thomas, the chef, he'll go in and make lunches for people outside of the particular hours of the service, just to ensure that people have food. I do know that Judy at St. Vincent, the executive director, is on the food insecurity, or maybe it's food security network across Kingston. And so there are organizations that are working together to make sure that they're not duplicating, they have an integrated service, and they're providing food for people on a daily basis. I also recently had a conversation with Ron DeCandy from Martha's Table, similar numbers that they're seeing. In our area, we have wonderful farmers that offer local produce available for purchase. So we can certainly do that to support our local community. And I do know that there is a food box program at the Kingston East Community Center. I will also say this, is that I was at the food bank a couple of weeks ago, and I've been there many times, but what was staggering to me is they've also obviously seen an increase, but every postal code in Kingston uses their services. So just I want you to think about that. If you think that it's people just living in the North End, there are people in your neighborhood that are utilizing food service so that they can feed their families. And I think that that really hit home for me, because we often find ourselves spending money on housing and the essentials. And at the end of the day, there are our neighbors and our friends who do not have enough money to put food on the table. And so in terms of my long-term strategy, I might be out of time, but I'm going to talk really quickly, is we need to, again, relationship build with the local farmers, local food providers. I know some of the big businesses have been very supportive of the food bank, such like Costco, Walmart, Loblaws, but I think we can all do our part to make sure that we are supporting local farmers and perhaps starting programs where we make sure that all of our families in Pittsburgh have food on their table.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. So the questions are starting to come in now. It's getting exciting. So Mark typed a question to me in the chat. Mark, would you like me to read it, or would you like to ask it yourself? I will read it. Its focus is poverty reduction. And the question is, do you have a position on replacing many current programs with a basic income?
Great question, Mark. So on my platform, on my website, that is one of my main goals, is poverty reduction. And so I do not have a specific platform for basic income. I would support and promote that to businesses and corporations that come into the city. So for instance, through a lot of our development, we're seeing companies make Kingston their home. I would support a basic income. I'm just not sure if that's actually the city's mandate. I believe that's more of a provincial mandate in terms of minimum wage, working wage. I do know that through St. Vincent de Paul, we have voted for, I think it's actually a living wage for our employees. So from a poverty reduction standpoint, I would be supportive of certainly advocating for a living wage.
Great, thank you. All right, Sherry Lachine is next.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate you. I was going to say picking on me, calling on me. I really appreciate that. And hello to all you lovelies. I wear many hats, and the hat that I wear the most recently is one of mental health. I know we talked about healthcare, and it sort of went down into the path of surgery and joy. I hear you, and I appreciate you. I guess I also realize that municipalities don't necessarily focus on the mental health, aspects of its citizens, people. It's usually something that's pushed to the province, if not on the national. But if we're all aware, of course, the Canadian Mental Health Association closed down about 2 years ago, and it left a little bit of a hole that other organizations were able to pick up on. I guess, Lindsay, I just want to sort of bring this to light, especially after COVID. We're starting to realize that our mental health, especially of our youth, of our teachers, of our first responders, is one that is really important. I guess my question is maybe where's your heart? Where do you stand on that? And then maybe as a follow-on, where does, in terms of the mental health of municipal employees, where does that sort of land in that sense? Thanks in advance, Lindsay.
Thank you, Sherry. That is, it's a great question, and it's a huge topic. And what I've been speaking with more recently with people out on, as I've been going door to door, is often the topic of homelessness or the unhoused comes up. And I believe very strongly, and this is where my intergovernment relations and relationship building and working with all levels of government really comes to play, is that you can't try and house someone without looking at the whole person. And I think mental health is a huge component. I think we do have a role to play. How that pans out, I'm not entirely sure, but I would be a huge advocate and hugely in favor of helping anyone. And so I see the people on the street when I'm at St. Vincent de Paul, and I know that there's more issues than just not having a home. And that comes from mental health support. And so I think, again, relationship building and working with the province for funding, and really being strong about what our citizens need. It's about the people. There's about, I believe it's 275 people that are currently unhoused in Kingston. And I would hazard a guess that 275 of those need mental health support. And so I think that's super important. Absolutely 100% behind that. And anytime I talk about unhoused and homelessness, my next word is we need mental health support. In terms of mental health support for city workers, it goes as far as saying mental health support for all workers and all healthcare workers. I met a gentleman, a young man who was struggling. I actually just chatted with him yesterday and had a huge impact on me as I walked around. And mental health support, as we've just walked through 3 years of an unknown, I think is really critically important. And so employee health strategies, both within the city and within the hospital and with small business, I think are really important. And I will continue to strive for supporting all mental health. I have 3 teenagers. I believe that I could use mental health support. And I think it's just something that we need to shift. We need a real shift to realize that that's a really important part of our health.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Lindsay.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Okay, we have another question from Nan Hudson. Nan, would you like me to read it, or would you like to say it yourself?
I'm happy to say it myself.
There we go. There's Nan.
We're just getting an echo here because there's 2 of us on this Zoom call. Thanks very much for this opportunity. I'm really, really glad that we're able to meet this evening. And I just wondered what our candidate might be able to share about the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Garden, which is an outgrowth of Faith United Church, which is a local United Church here in Kingston East, when they offered the land that had been purchased for building a church years ago to the Indigenous community here for an act of reconciliation. And so I'm just wondering what you can tell us about that, and how does that fit into the earlier question about food insecurity and coordinated responses to it. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Nan. I'm going to be super upfront. I don't actually know much about the transaction, but I will say is that, when we do land acknowledgements at many meetings that we go to, I often wonder what comes next. And so this relationship and this partnership between the Faith United Church and our Indigenous community is that step forward. And it speaks to working together and sharing and hopefully learning from each other, both growing opportunities, cultivating opportunities, and just really establishing a trust. I grew up every summer blueberry picking in northern Saskatchewan with my Indigenous grandmother and living off the land pretty much. I mean, I always went back to someone's house, but certainly my roots are embedded in remembering where you came from and honoring the people around you, no matter what culture they are. And so while I apologize, I don't know anything specific about that, I would certainly look into it, because now I'm super curious, and I actually have to say I've been curious ever since I drove by. But what I will say is that it is a true beginning in terms of fostering a relationship and an understanding and a commitment to each other, that also offers food and growth. And I mean, how many of us this past weekend were lucky enough to share a meal with the people that we love? And I think that takes it even further by cultivating the land together.
Okay, well, thank you. I hope you'll drop by the garden. I'm sure people there would be happy to show you around. Thank you.
I'd love to. Thank you, Nan.
All right, thank you. The garden is amazing. I can attest to that. And the programming on it is equally amazing. I'm not, is there any other, Sherry's saving the day. Sherry's swooping in. Sherry.
I wasn't going to take up the space, but there you go. There's a space. Another one of the hats that I get to wear is supporting the Kingston East Business Association. Now, we haven't been super active over the pandemic. We just haven't. We're going to be refocusing, refurbishing, and supporting our businesses, small, medium, and large. I guess my question is, based on a lot of the stuff that's happened over the past number of years, which I've been here for 20 years off and on as a military person, I've seen a lot of really cool growth on the east side, services, bridges, right? Transportation stuff. So I really appreciate all of that. I guess, Lindsay, I just wanted to ask maybe another two-part question. One is, how do you feel you are going to support local businesses, as well as how do you feel, and I don't know if it's a feeling question, but I just spent a whole day talking about feelings, so that's where I am. How do you feel about hearing the voice of constituents? How do you think that would go about? And I guess that's it. Businesses, how do you support them? And constituents, and how do you support them and hear them going forward?
For sure. Those are two great questions. So obviously, since I moved to Kingston, there's been a huge growth in Kingston East, which has been incredible. But I think all along, I feel like Pittsburgh residents are really inclined to support the businesses, and there is that kind of local camaraderie that goes along with sort of staying local. So two things, and actually I just wrote this into, I believe it was the Wig this morning, is making sure that we have, and I don't necessarily want to bring up roads because I hear a lot about roads, but the traffic and so the bridge is incredible. The bridge is going to offer us a huge reprieve in terms of the way that we navigate the city coming up in the fall. But I also want to make sure that our local businesses are benefactors of that as well. So how can we support our local businesses to people maybe living sort of more sort of North End, John Counter? I think of our Berryfield Plaza that has some incredible cultural restaurants too, beautiful butchers. And so I feel like there could be a lot could be done in terms of sort of promoting those small businesses. At the same time, we have sort of medium-sized businesses that maybe aren't sort of a walk-in self-serve type restaurant, but how can we sort of, there are veterinary services and there's physiotherapy and all those types of businesses are there. How can we, sort of cultivate more space for them? And so I think really promotion through some of our groups and giving those as options. They're very local. They're on a bus route right through the East End in terms of the Innovation Park. So making sure that there's accessible roads, accessible bus transportation for our seniors and for our students, and really that kind of promotion in terms of also spreading the word. I still feel like sharing experiences about great services is in the city is sort of second to none in terms of promotion. Hearing voices of constituents. What has been incredible, although I was incredibly scared to go knock on people's doors, particularly after COVID, and people telling me that they actually hide when people knock on the doors, is I believe that is actually the best way. And so I would like to actually continue to knock on doors throughout, you know, if I'm lucky enough to gain a seat at the table and become councillor for this area, I would like and commit to knocking on people's doors and introducing myself and making sure that people have access to me. You know, there's a lot of people that I've spoken to, and of course this, you know, we're in such an electronic world, is they're like, but you know, you didn't come and knock on my door, or I didn't get a chance to talk to you. And I think that's really important to recognize the different in demographics, the difference of ages, technology, accessibility, and inclusion. And so I would very much still continue to hear the voices of our neighbors by going around and walking and knocking on the doors.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. We have Joy has another question.
Okay.
And I just want to say that we are at coming up to 7:40. The event is set to end at 8. So if you have questions, now's the time to get them in the chat. Raise your hand.
I love that I have a second go around. So the question about businesses is super cool. We have a medical center developing in Pittsburgh County, and it's amazing. We now have a breast center of excellence right in our own district. We have COPE, which is a huge coup for our community. Greenwood Park is establishing. We now have a metabolic clinic run by Jess Watkins. That development is massive for our community. And I don't expect you to know all about it, Lindsay. I think that, you know, when you come in, there will be plenty of time to know about it. But I just want to put in a pitch for the importance of that, not only for Pittsburgh Township, but for our entire community. It is an amazing resource. It is, you know, it's publicly funded for individuals. People don't have to pull out their wallet when they go to use the services that are being established there. And there's capacity to build a lot more. And of course, I have many ideas that I'm not going to talk about right now. But what I'm really interested in knowing is, why are you running? What was your motivation to run? I just want to hear why you're doing this, because you're running against someone who has had 2 terms already. And you know, like, we know incumbents tend to win. So why are you doing this? And thank you for doing it. It's lovely to have choice.
So thank you so much. So actually, I was going to get to that at the beginning, but I know I didn't talk fast enough through my Alberta upbringing. You know, quite simply, I love this city, and I have spent the last 16 years involved in many charities, many boards, getting involved in the community. I love meeting people. I love, you know, we are wired to connect together. And I actually, you know, I would love to engage more people in this district to get involved with municipal politics. I mean, it's interesting, municipal politics on a day-to-day basis affects us the most than any other level of government. And I mean, to some degree, but, you know, on our roads, on our transit, on our schools, you know, daily, I feel like this is a real opportunity that we have to engage people within our area and within the whole city. So that is my why. My why is because I want to be more involved. I want to be a role model for my kids to get involved in and having a say and representing people that maybe don't feel that they have a voice. I think that's probably, you know, there are a lot of issues in particular areas of Pittsburgh that I've heard about and that I've researched and I'm trying to learn more about. And everyone loves, you know, for the most part, where they live, and they love being in this community. And I actually think that people really just want to make it a better place. And I want to be a part of that. That's my why.
That's lovely. Thank you. I'm trying to, be very moderate in my moderating, and I'm not seeing any other questions. So I
Okay.
did see in the rules, Christine, that I could ask a question.
Oh,
Yeah, actually, that's sometimes the moderators stepped up and asked a question or two just to keep the conversation going. So by all
I
means.
got a question. So lots of great topics of it. I was busy scribbling notes through all of it. So I'm going to ask this very broad question. So I work in cultural heritage in the sector in Kingston, which is actually an interesting and quite robust sector for our region, not only for Pittsburgh Township, but for Kingston as a whole. And has many tentacles in many aspects, including economy, development, sustainability, health. I mean, you can go in all directions. And if you've lived in Kingston, you've probably noticed there are ongoing tensions and provocations and disagreements about where the intersections of development, conservation, and sustainability lie. And I mean those in the broadest topics. So sustainability could be the environment, it can be health, it can be all that. So I am just curious, it's a big question and I apologize, but I am curious about what your approach or your ethos or your sensibility is to the balance between these three often very competing and contesting sort of strands of community life.
for sure. Now, do you want this in particular to arts and culture or just in general?
I think in general, I mean, that's just where I'm coming from.
Okay, yeah.
But it's a Kingston, it's a very sort of big issue around Kingston.
For sure. So, I mean, we're living in a city that has a long history, and that is super important. And again, goes back to sort of my core belief that we need to remember where we've come from. That sort of shapes sort of some of our foundation. Development, again, comes into a whole bunch of issues that are on the table right now: affordable housing, taxes, how far do we develop? If we develop more homes, we will get more property tax that will allow us to do more spending. So there is obviously a need for that. Sustainability, a lot of emails that I get are, what are your stance on the environment and sustainability? And I think that all three of these, development, conservation, and sustainability, there needs to be a balance. So I just recently, and I'm not an expert on the Tannery project. I obviously was not part of those ongoing discussions that have gone on in council. But what would appear to me is that it wasn't the right time in terms of the builder and what was needed, and what was desired by the current council. I think that we need to protect and preserve to the point where it isn't costing us in lost revenue or lost opportunity. Again, it would have to be a specific, say, development per se that I could certainly research, but I personally don't want to destroy any biodiversity for the sake of one particular developer, if that makes any sense. What I would like to see, and again, goes to really concrete conversations about what the pros and cons are and what is needed for this city. We do need housing. What does that look like in terms of what is the best case scenario? Do we, reopen the Tannery area? Do we look at building upwards? Those are all very important questions that I think need to be answered if we are looking at, and this is more of an economic question, as we move into kind of an unstable ground as we're looking at inflation. I mean, the city, our own families, individuals need to look at spending as the cost of everything increases. So, I'm someone that likes to look at something from all angles. I like information. I like to talk to people and get professional opinions on things. And I think from my perspective, there needs to be a middle ground in terms of what is developed and when. And I also say this, is you have one opportunity to create a development. And I think it needs to be done with all factors in consideration. So for instance, is there going to be waterfront that is used for communal spaces, green space for communities, or is it going to be used for actual lots for individual use? And I'm not saying that one's better than the other. I'd have to look at a particular area, but I also think too that you can't rush into anything to meet a certain need. I had a boss once actually at Canadian Blood Services. He's still the CEO of Canadian Blood Services. And he said, you can't base policy on dollars. You have to make your decision on what you're going to do no matter what. And so that has to be the right decision for the right reasons. And so
sorry, I am going to cut you off there. As much as I would love to hear you talk more about my question.
Yeah.
We have another question on the floor.
Okay.
And I feel I have to segue.
For sure.
So Elizabeth, please go ahead.
Thank you. All right. And the challenge of these discussions is we are coming at you, Lindsay, from all different directions. And there are communities within communities.
Mhm.
So I'd like to ask you, speaking from the Two-Spirit LGBTQ plus communities,
Yeah.
what kind of ally are you going to be? The city of Kingston took a very courageous and welcome stand denouncing conversion therapy some months ago. And I know I was so glad to be in a city where the councillors made that very public decision. What do you have to say to those of us in the Two-Spirit LGBTQ plus community?
Oh, what do I have to say? That I love you, that we are all, I believe we are all free to be who we are, and that our authenticity is what adds to the beauty and the depth of this community. And I actually recently I was on an airplane home from Edmonton, and I sat with I think it's Blake Desjardins, and he is the first Two-Spirited Indigenous MP. And we had a lot of conversations. And I know Sherry Lachine is in Cold Lake. He actually he was born there actually, so he represents Edmonton Griesbach. But I had this incredible conversation, and here is a man who has just overcome so many obstacles in his life, mostly stemming from Indigenous, that he actually inspired me to be here today. He doesn't know that because it was a very short conversation, but I guess if you know me, and Elizabeth, you don't know me, but what I will say is this, is that I'm a strong supporter of your community. I'm a strong supporter of people being able to live their best life.
All right. Hope to see you at Pride 2023.
Oh yeah. I'll
All
be
right.
there.
Good.
Thank you so much for that question.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Lindsay. I just did a little note in the chat. So I am going to be, it's 7:50 now, and we do need to leave some time for some final remarks from our candidate, Lindsay Duggan. So I am putting out the call for a final question. Anything, this is it, I got one. I got an incredibly important question that I think we should end the evening on, but I need to open it to the floors. Okay, anyone? This is, I was gonna say, Lindsay, I mean, what's your feelings about bringing an IKEA into the Kingston area?
That's like a hot topic.
It's a hot topic in
Amy?
Kingston amongst many populations.
I'm all for that.
That wasn't a serious question. That's brilliant. Thank you, everyone. I hope I certainly enjoyed listening, and I was making lots and lots of notes. And I just want to repeat something that Lindsay, a phrase that Lindsay has literally just said, and I think it's so beautiful. So I think it's a wonderful way to enter our opening remarks. So Lindsay said, our authenticity adds to the beauty and the depth of our community. And I think those are very true and wise words and in every aspect. So thank you for sharing those with us. I really like that. That captured my imagination. One final, I'm perusing the blank screen of names. No, I'm not seeing any hands, and I'm not seeing any additional comments. So Lindsay, my official instructions tell me that you have 2 minutes for final remarks.
Okay.
Go for it.
First of all, thank you all of you for being here tonight and giving time up during your day or during your evening, and for the very thoughtful and insightful questions. I think they really touched on all parts of our community. I really want to encourage everyone to vote. I think 30% of people in Kingston voted at the last election, and probably not that many in Pittsburgh because you didn't have a choice last time. But I'm here to tell you that you do have a choice. I'm a new voice, a new perspective to the ongoing issues that maybe have trailed from the last council. But I have a new approach that I think is inclusive of listening and to open dialogue. I love meeting people. I love engaging in conversation. And I want you to feel that someone is listening to you and taking action. I mean, I'm not going to solve all of the problems and all of the issues that are happening in the city, but I also want to switch it to a positive. There are a lot of amazing things going on in this city. And I think that together we can show true leadership as a city, whether it be on an issue that's very important to what I'm hearing in terms of healthcare, arts and culture, homelessness. Like, we are a good sized city that if we work together and build relationships with other people, other levels of government, stakeholders, we have amazing educational institutions close by. I think that we can actually show true leadership in a lot of these issues. And this is important coming out of the pandemic where we really felt super isolated. I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. Please email me if you have any further questions. I would really love your support on October 24th. And if anyone, like I said, if anyone wants to communicate further, I would love to engage with you and meet you, maybe for coffee. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Christine, do you want the final note of the evening, being the boss of it all?
Oh, hardly. But I'll just say thank you, Jamie, for doing a lovely job moderating despite your internet quirkiness. You did a lovely job, and thank you very much, Lindsay, for sharing your thoughts with us all, and everybody for the terrific questions. It's wonderful to have this opportunity to promote the democratic process, and don't forget to vote. And thanks again very much, everyone. Lovely evening.
Thank you.
Farewell all. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, Christine, I just want to say, actually, now not as moderator, but thank you for organizing this from the Coalition of Kingston Communities. I found it I think it's great.
Yeah.
I found it very frustrating the last couple of municipal elections, sort of being, well, the last one, I guess I was downtown in a different district at that point, but like, it was frustrating because I felt like, well, what's the point? Because there was no conversation from this end. So thank you so much for taking the time to facilitate this.
Oh, we've got a great little team who worked on this together. Last time we were hoisting speakers and mics and booking gyms in schools. Oh, God, so this is,
I know there's a certain seduction to the Zoom meeting now. Right? Like, oh, I can just, who knows what I'm wearing at the bottom, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a technical anxiety, of course, but it actually turned out fine. So
my internet. Because we're on the same internet line right now, you and I. Maybe.
Oops, I realized I should stop recording.
Yes. No, but I think it's really fabulous.